Okay, I begin. So today, November the 9th, the great Battista Piranesi died. So I wrote this poem for him because, as I said, this year there are 300 years since his birth. I begin. I called him Piranesi. I played with the word because Piro refers to fire, and you'll understand at the end why the reference to fire. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, but this happened after 1778. That is, it happened after you, Piranesi, died. Bastille felt, it is true, but what about the inner Bastille? Carceri d'invenzione or not, are we all prisoners eternally? Probably, with very few exceptions. But what are we to do with the equally eternal big yes? The architects, some of them claim architecture is all about. Is there room for pessimism in architecture? And how come some of those who do believe in the yes admire you, Giovanni Battista? Wolfprix asked himself, what is architecture? He answered, yes. But maybe you, Giovanni Battista, would have answered to the very same question, no. How is it? Is architecture a yes or a no? Deconstruction, I felt, represented, symbolized an obvious no. Although looking at it from a different angle, maybe it itself was a yes to fury, to the tornado, to the turbulence, a yes to conflict, to drama, to war, a yes to taking apart, ripping off, a yes to destruction. But didn't you also, Giovanni Battista, ripped off huge structures, maybe in some kind of anticipation of the fall of Bastille? But again, what about the inner Bastille? Yes, we collapsed the walls of the real one. Yes, liberté, égalité, fraternité made its revolutionary song be heard everywhere, or almost everywhere. Yet the philosopher was probably right. The most important victory is over oneself. And those who tore down the walls of Bastille perhaps didn't tear down the walls of the inner prison. Just look, the deconstructivists perhaps didn't do. Just like the deconstructivists perhaps didn't do it. Perhaps. But we do need truth. In the absence of truth, we perish, said Le Corbusier, although himself sometimes didn't tell the truth. Like, for example, in those doctored photographs he published in order to sustain graphically his truth. But then, what is truth? My truth might not be your truth. And indeed, as George Bernard Shaw said, in a room might not be two people, but six. The one I think you are, the one you think you are, the one you really are, plus the one you think I am, the one I think I am, the one I really am. Thus, six. And maybe even this number is too low and misleading. Your talent as an etcher, Giovanni Battista, was indeed out of this world sometimes, although your son Francesco was good too. How did you see the world, Giovanni Battista? Did you foresee the disaster? Did you foresee the general ruin? Did you depict the grandeur of dissolution in order to memorialize fall and decline, or in order to increase our inborn appetite for hope? You do move, this is for sure, even not quite innocent people like Mr. Koolhaas, even if he likes you. Everybody likes you. Who cares you didn't build much and you didn't build significantly? You built with incisions in the steel plate and in ink. Are your etchings real? Yes, they are much more real than many of the so-called real buildings. But are all built buildings real? No, they are not. They are just illusions or delusions. They do not exist, Piranesi, except through the pollution they provoked. Plus, if architecture does not exist, as Louis Kahn said, what would the difference be between a built building and a drawing? Although, of course, even temporarily, a building should be confronted with the elements. It is a must, perhaps. You were born in October, halfway in terms of days between Engels and Le Corbusier. The young Engels and the even younger Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier said, that the real challenge in life is not to remain young, but to become young. Your etchings, Piranesi, show exactly this, becoming. They are about the dynamics of life. If there is a constant, it is the eternal return of the same. Things go up and things go down. Life moves on, but so does death. Ruins are replaced by the new, only for the new to follow not much later. The same fatidic destiny. But maybe the ruin is not fatidic. The ruin tells us how the building was made. The ruin reminds us of what is to follow. The ruin tempers our vanity, even in the case of the great pharaohs. What happened to Villa Adriana in Tivoli? Ruin, and the wind and the rain and the dust tempest still hid the monolith named Cheops. You expressed this fact quite powerfully. You saw and depicted the cemetery, the human cemetery. All is grave or waiting to become grave. Are we to mourn? Maybe. Or maybe we should laugh in rowers, since indeed Nietzsche was perhaps right. Only the human laughs because the human suffered the most. Did you suffer, Giovanni Battista? Maybe not. Maybe your artwork sufficed to sublimate the pain. Maybe. We thank you for what you gave us, even if some of your works adorn glittering suburban kitchen. Or maybe especially then, to contrast them, a stove, a refrigerator, a sink, and on the wall, Vedute di Roma. Or worse, or better, Pestum, the temple of Hera. Yes, that very heavy temple, immensely heavy, because before the Doric, there was just weight, the weight of gravity, that cosmic force that haunts us, forcing us to imagine in great fear that we can't escape it. But why should we escape the beautiful certitude, maybe the only one that we have? Gravity, the force of gravity. It is said that at Pestum, infertile couples, if they spend the night there, become miraculously fertile. What attracted you to Pestum? Maybe the very same reasons that attracted chronologically Winkelmann, Goethe, Kant, all great admirers of the telluric force of Hera's temple. Kant said it clearly, for me, Pestum is more important than the Parthenon. I would agree, it is, although the tourist loves more a polished truth, which might not be a truth at all, than the rough one. But Kant himself, as we know, in certain aspects of his life, lied. We all lie, we are all liars. You lie too, maybe making us believe that there is beauty in ruins, in death. No, there isn't. We should all cry together with you. The end cannot be happy. It is to be, if it is to be a ruin. Let's not be delusional. We grow towards becoming ruins, and our buildings as well. In between, there is the delusion named life. We thank you, though, Piranesi, for depicting for us the grandeur of death. We thank you for immortalizing mortality. We thank you for telling us that darkness will follow. It will always follow. Or is it the very same darkness that preceded us? Maybe the very same darkness in the eternal swing between yesterday, now, and tomorrow. But tomorrow will be the next yesterday. And as lovers of symmetry, we might say that yesterday was always, and it might always be another tomorrow. We salute you on your 300th birthday, and we hope one day we will meet in that very beyond you find yourself in. Now, but what is now? It already passed. And Ungaretti steps in, whispering, and I got the taste of that winged desire that light represses when it dies. Yes, fire, fire. That very fire Heraclitus thought was the beginning of all things, even of God. That fire that burns everything down, that fire that brings everything up. That pyro that you were carrying in your soul and in your hand, etcher. The fire that warms us, that burns us in the winter of our solitude. Okay, this is what I wrote. And now I'll show you some pictures of his engravings. I kind of presented 2 or 3 times Piranesi, so I'm a little bit, not tired, but I don't like to repeat myself. So I'll show you a short version of his work now, because I made a longer presentation about him on the 4th of October when it was his birthday. So I'll just show you some etchings that he made, especially from the series Il Carcere d'Invenzione, the prisons, that I also mentioned in what I just read to you. I think he was a very modern spirit in the 18th century. I mean, these are psychological landscapes or psycho landscapes. They are architectural, but they represent, I mean, they are the invenzione, they are inventions, but they represent the inner world, the world of his soul, of his imagination, of his mind. You see there written Carcere d'Invenzione, Gian Battista Piranesi, a great draftsman and etcher. What he built was not so moving as his etchings, but he still, I mean, people extremely diverse, like Rem Koolhaas and Wolf Prix, they both love Piranesi. When they were asked, you know, tell us, you know, a few names of the people you admire, they mentioned Piranesi out of, you know, 5 names, which says a lot about the influence, the power of Piranesi's art, even on contemporary people. Okay, so we look at these Carcere d'Invenzione, and what do we see? Well, we see monumental architectures that sooner or later are destined to the final, you know, resolution, so to speak. You know, yes, the sunlight still enters the big inner prison, but there is something majestically tragic about these visions that he had. And also, I would say, it's a commentary coming from the 17th century when he lived. He was born in 1720 and died in 1778. So he lived in the 18th century. But you'll see some kind of a connection with the other 3 people I will talk about today, who were all 3 of them historicists. And, you know, the oldest of them, that is Piranesi, actually achieved what I would call a history or unhistory, because his historical reference is actually, well, it shouldn't be named really historical, because he transcends history. While the younger 3 ones that I will talk about today, they didn't transcend history. And that is a deficiency, I would say, they had and have. Because I do believe what Charles Baudelaire, the great French poet, said, a good work in art has 2 halves. One half speaks about the ephemeral, the circumstantial, the temporary, and the other half about the eternal and the immutable. Art has to have both sides. If it doesn't, it will have an ephemeral life. Anyway, so Piranesi, 300 years since his birth, but he died on the 9th of November, and he should be remembered because he deserves it. Although, you know, he didn't build much, and he didn't really build significantly, but through his drone architectural works, he deserves to be known. And he deserves to be known exactly because he has both sides. Yes, there is an architecture which could have been in the 18th century, but it's also an architecture which could be now. I mean, you know, the quest for monumentality still exists. The human drama is still the same. The turmoil, the inner turmoil and the outer turmoil are the same. So psychologically speaking, at least, the truth of his etchings is of our time as well. Now, of course, when you look at these drawings and these etchings, you wouldn't ask functionalist questions. You know, you wouldn't ask, well, how am I going to bring the refrigerator in? Or is the, you know, the corridor wide enough to maybe bring a piano in? Or, I mean, where is the parking space? No, this is not about functionalism. This is about something else. And that's why people still talk about him, because if he would have concerned himself with functionalist, banalities in his time, we would not have talked about him today.